Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my review of the latest release by Horizon Watches, the Pilgrim. Now you may or may not have heard of Horizon. This is only their second watch. The Nautilus was their first. It was released on Kickstarter in late 2021. That means you may or may not have heard of Fred Becker, the man who designs these watches. But I bet you've heard of some of the companies he has designed for in the past. In fact, you may already have a Fred Becker in your collection without even knowing it, because his client list includes Zelos, Borealis, Grupo Gamma, and many, many others. He's going for a totally unique look with his own brand though. Kind of steampunk meets Art Deco, so Jules Verne meets the Empire State Building, if you see what I mean. I think it looks pretty good though, better than my descriptions anyway. No pop-up, no siren today. This isn't a sponsored video. These are on loan to me, the watches, and they'll be going back to Fred as soon as I am finished with them. The Pilgrim launches on Kickstarter on the 23rd of February, so you have a week or so to do some further research and to set an alert before the campaign starts. I will of course leave links to the Horizon website and or the campaign in the description of the video. So without further ado, let's flip the camera and get on with it. So what is it then? Well, like for his first watch, the Nautilus, Fred was again inspired by a Jules Verne book from the 1870s, in this case, A Captain at 15. Now the Pilgrim model name is the name of the ship in that book. It features on the caseback also. So it quite deliberately has a bit of a Victorian era steampunk look therefore, I guess, but also perhaps with some Art Deco in there too. A bracelet is available, but this dual crown compressor style diver was designed around this rubber strap. It's really chunky in a good way, I think, and it's very solid feeling, very well made. Of course, I have my own small list of complaints at the back end of the video, but nothing too fundamental, nothing that would put you off if you like what you see. These are priced at $559 US, which I suppose is not super cheap for a watch on a rubber strap, but it is powered by a Sellita SW200. The design is unique and there are so many really nice touches wherever you look with this one. I think you're paying for the design today, and I think the design is worth the asking price. So the basics. This one has a diameter of 41mm and a thickness of 12.4. Now this prototype actually came in a little thicker at 12.7, but they're changing the movement holder for production units to make it a touch slimmer. No change to the lug to lug though for production units. That will be an eminently wearable 46.5. Now they've gone for 22mm lug width here. I think with a 41 you can go either way. You can go 22 or you can go 20. But what they've done is put a big old taper on that rubber strap. It tapers all the way down to 16. So you get the stability of broader lugs, but you get that vintage taper. Weight on the supplied rubber strap is 113 grams. Now that is quite chunky. And if we have a look at the case, you can see where that chunk comes from. It's very, very nicely finished, beautifully sculpted with multiple facets all coming together well. Plus, I believe this is a 4-piece case, very unusual. The mid case comes in 2 sections. The inner raised ridges of the lugs sit on a different piece of metal to the side sections. There's also a fixed bezel on top of that, and then a screw-on case back, making 4 pieces total. Multiple finishes as well. There's a vertical brush to the side of the case, high polished upper lug surfaces, 2 different finishes to the bezel, including a longitudinal brush to the upper surface, and you've got those raised claws as mentioned. What is really pleasing is that there are no sharp edges. It's all really well integrated. The 2 crowns are just under 7mm and they're both screwed down. They are both unsigned, but I will let Fred off with that because they're really gorgeous, with circular brushed ends and a little high polish indent that, because of the polish, tricks the eye into thinking that it's convex and not concave. That's just one of a number of nice touches at various points on this watch. It comes supplied on a rubber strap. It was designed to be supplied on this rubber strap. It's a very good one. FKM rubber, Horizon branded, tapering as discussed, and plenty of indents on the back surface to help with sweat also. Double retainers. Now one of those is designed to sit in those little shoulders and stay put, and the buckle is just glorious. Again, it has that Art Deco Empire State Building step style to it, just like the 4-piece case. It's chunky, but then it needs to be to balance the head of the watch visually. There is also a bracelet that was sent to me by separate cover quite late in the day. I assume that this is going to be an optional extra therefore in the campaign. It's beautifully well made though. There's a satin brush on the single large link and high polish on the 3 smaller links. Plus there's a high polish beveled edge. There's loads of flex in it, so it'll be nice and comfortable, and the butterfly clasp is great. The Horizon logo is etched into that little centre section and it clips together nicely. Just push pins holding it all together though, but it is slim, so I'll let it off with that. I guess it will depend on how much it costs though, whether people tick that particular options box. I'll show you on rubber and bracelet shortly. But before I get it on wrist, let's go in for another look at the dial and the handset, because that's really what this one is all about. It has a fairly unique look to it. Fred is clearly building up his own brand identity around this Jules Verne theme, but we are retro well before the mid-century retro that a lot of other brands adopt. All indices are applied 8 circles on the majority of the hours, but trapezoidal shapes at the 12, the 3, the 6 and the 9. One very neat trick is integrating the date complication into one of those trapeziums. And there's also a custom date wheel with matching deco numerals. The Horizon logo is just printed on underneath the 12. I think it's a nice logo with the line framing it above rather than below, and the H and the N tapering at the edges. Pilgrim also looks good in a fairly casual handwriting style font above the 6. No other dial text, you note. No water resistance ratings, no unnecessary mentions of automatic movements. All nice and clean. There's a little bit of texture to that centre section as well. And I like the hands, they're all high polished silver. It's a fairly simple minute hand and a segmented arrowhead hour hand. There's a bevel down the middle of both of those. It's a lovely slender needle second hand with lollipop and a double diamond counterbalance. I have never seen that before. It looks good. Another neat trick, if you look at the pinion stack, is the addition of an angled silver plate to lift the handset and help create depth. The internal rotating bezel also helps with that. It's large, it runs at a fairly shallow angle and has similarly stylized numerals at the compass points to the rest of the dial, and just single long sticks at the 5s. No minute markers on the bezel though. This is not therefore a tool diver today. It is definitely more of a stylish desk diver. But that doesn't mean to say it shouldn't have good lume. You know I love my lume, and there is plenty of lume to love here, isn't there? Depending on which version you go for, you either get BGW 9 or C3. Either way, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Plenty on the hands, the indices and the internal bezel markings. And another nice touch is that custom date wheel is also lume to match. And at the end of my 20 minutes, which I always think is about 4 or 5 hours of human eye equivalent, both watches are still perfectly legible. On wrist, I've mentioned the word a couple of times, chunky, in a reassuring way. It fits really nicely on my 7-inch wrist, the lugs point down, the lug to lug is compact. The tapered rubber is soft and comfortable, the proportions therefore are just right. As always though, with a largish watch on rubber, if you don't wear it fairly tight, there is a chance it might bobble around a bit. And overall, it feels larger than the dimensions suggest because of the weight. I assume this one has a big metal movement holder, the box sapphire is going to be thick, the case back looks thick, etc, etc. Everything about the head of the watch is robust, but that does add weight. Interestingly, the bracelet doesn't actually add a lot of weight at all though. Only 146 grams as opposed to 113, so just over 30 grams more than the rubber, whereas I would have expected a bigger bracelet to push that up to maybe 175 or so, given the weight in the watch head. And there are no micro adjustments here, meaning you're going to be wearing it loose and you're going to be in more danger of it bobbling therefore because of the heavy watch head and light bracelet. Legibility is okay, if not outstanding. Like I said, it's definitely not a tool diver. This is not what Fred is doing with these watches. It's very much a stylish design and therefore a stylistic choice, with a few concessions to practicality inherent in that choice. Pocket shots to finish, I definitely prefer the green to the deep ocean, which is what they call that dark blue. I always think green looks particularly good with that photinered look to the hands and the markers. That is the bluish one on the bracelet. As you can see, I've got it slightly loose here, wearing it down towards the knuckle. Alright, it's lovely to look at both by day and by night, but is it perfect? Of course it isn't. So here follows my moans and niggles. Well, I love the design, but it's a big watch with the legibility of a small watch. It's a 41mm case, but that big wide fixed bezel sits inboard of that, and then obviously you have a large angled internal bezel leading to a rather small dial aperture. You know, it's like a 41 but with the dial of a 35 or thereabouts effectively because of that double bezel arrangement. So if your eyes aren't quite as sharp as they used to be, or you like that one glance legibility that you get from a bigger dial, this might not give you that. Similarly, the date complication is very cute, a really nice touch, but it's also rather small because it's fitting into that trapezoidal index shape on a small dial. Not so bad for the single digits, but once you get into double digits, particularly the 2s, it begins to look a bit cramped. The blue anti-reflective undercoating is ever present on this crystal, despite the fact that there are only 3 layers apparently. That's okay for the deep ocean model, but it doesn't quite go with the green. I would rather they had used clear coat, to be honest. And personally, I'm afraid I am not a fan of straight cut end-link bracelets. I kinda get it, it goes with the period looks, but I always feel they look a bit unfinished. I think this would have looked much better, much neater with fitted end links. Plus there are no micro adjustments on the bracelet. I think therefore this is a much stronger offering on the rubber strap, but I admit a personal bias against this type of end link arrangement in the first place. Also, not a big fan of the inscriptions between the lugs. Serial number is okay, I suppose, but the Latin phrase again just doesn't do it for me. It means fortune favours the brave, which is another Jules Verne reference, but I'm not particularly into it. At least it's between the 12 o'clock lugs, so I don't have to look at it on wrist. But if you're prepared to take on the slightly small dial in the big case and you are keen on the rubber strap anyway, this thing's gorgeous. I like Fred's style, he's got a lot going on, but it is all well integrated and there isn't much else out there like it, especially not for the price he's charging. Very well constructed, very nicely finished, and it feels solid with plenty of weight even on the rubber. If you also appreciate what Fred is doing here, you won't have to wait too long to see some more different categories of watch with this look. I believe the next cab off the rank is a pilot's watch. I can't wait to see what a steampunk / deco pilot's watch looked like. Jules Verne had his own ideas about what flying machines might look like. I wonder if he ever thought about what the timepieces of their pilots would look like. So there you have it, a really interesting look and one that I can't wait to see appear on other models in the future. This one's really nice, the Pilgrim, if not entirely perfect. I would give the bracelet a miss myself. It feels like a bit of an afterthought. Perhaps it was. Stick to the rubber and you get a cracking looking piece for the money. Perhaps you'd now like to take a look at some more of Fred's designs with other people's brand names on the dial. If so, click here or here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again in a future video, I hope.